I want to go over some different ways that I've helped scientists develop their main messages using a couple different types of templates. There's a bunch of different main messages, science communication templates that sort of float around in the scientific community. I take kind of a Bruce Lee approach to all of it, right? I want to pick out what works for a given task that I have before me. I want to help scientists identify what kind of template is going to be the most useful for them and for the sort of audience that they want to communicate with. The reason you want to distill your research, your public communication work, whatever you're doing, down to a handful of main messages is simple. You want to be able to prioritize, right? You usually have limited time to communicate, so there's only a certain number of messages that you're going to be able to get in there. And it's more effective generally to get across maybe 2 to 3, maybe 4 at the outside messages, and to back them up with details, to back them up with examples of memorable stories than it is to take, say, a limited TV interview that you have that might be 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes long, and to try to cram as much information in there as possible. Scientists tend to want to cram more information into public communication stuff they're doing. I'd rather see that information organized into a bunch of clear main messages that they want to get across to a given audience. That's why it's important to take the time to sit back, think about what your main messages are, how you're going to reinforce them while you're doing your public communication work. It's also important because it gives you something to anchor onto. If, for instance, you're doing an interview and you get asked a bunch of off-topic questions that don't make sense, if someone just hits you with a bunch of inaccurate stuff about your research or your field, if you have your main messages written down ahead of time, if it's something that you go back to over and over again, you can say, well, geez, isn't there some main point that I really would want to make that is related to what they're asking me about? Or can I redirect this conversation in a way that gets to what I do know and what I know to be accurate? So it sort of anchors conversations for you, interviews for you, public talks, Q&A sessions, policymaker meetings, you name it. You really got to think about what those main messages are. Soundbites. Soundbites are how we translate main messages into memorable takeaways. The term soundbite can sometimes have a negative connotation for people, but all it means in the news business and the journalism business is what you're going to convey from a source to your audience, right? What is that one quote? What is that one takeaway that's going to wind up in the news article? So, a slightly less jargony way of thinking about this is just, your takeaways, your take-home messages, the things that you want people to remember. There's a bunch of different types of sound bites that you can think about, particularly in a scientific context. Most of the quotes that you'll see from scientists in the media in particular are putting their research findings in perspective, explaining why something is new, why something is startling, why something is significant, where a scientific finding fits in compared to other scientific findings in the same field. Very often you'll also see quotes based on metaphors, based on analogies, even sometimes based on cliches that try to take something else people know about in the outside world and the culture and use that as a stand-in for a scientific concept. And that can be very helpful for making concepts stick. Every once in a while, scientists will be able to crack a good joke, right? It's hard. If you do find that funny line in your field that you can go back to, absolutely keep going back to it. Those are really, really good if you can do them. They can also go wrong. It's something you want to test out first. And finally, there's a lot of great sound bites that I see when I read science news and science-related news every day, where scientists just aren't afraid to talk about their emotions, right? How hard a piece of scientific research was, what it's like to be on a ship when you see a glacier fall into the ocean right in front of your eyes, or a chunk of glacier like that. Those incredibly human moments that scientists have when they're doing this work. Journalists love to pick up on those. I think they actually help humanize scientists. They help make their research clear. They help make people understand, these are people doing scientific research. It's not all deadly serious all the time, right? So I have actually collected a bunch of different types of sound bites on my website. I'll link to it here. And there's a sort of taxonomy of sound bites that you can school yourself in. If you're interested in science communication, if you're interested in thinking about different types of sound bites you can develop around your research or whatever research communications project you're working on to help make your main messages memorable and to help them stick. And if you're working with the media, frankly, to help journalists do their jobs, right? And to help them convey your messages accurately to their audiences.